For the last year and a half, there's been this very big ongoing court case between Microsoft and the rest of the world. They're attempting to buy Activision Blizzard for $70 billion. Now, in order to do this, everybody has to give it the green light. Each of the governments of the planet have to actually say, this won't break the gaming industry. The deal has to be approved. Well, for the last week, Microsoft has actually been in court with the American government, the Federal Trade Commission, and the FTC is very dead set on blocking the deal. So over the course of this week, I've been watching the court case incredibly close, and to be honest, everybody is doing some incredibly dumb stuff. Sony is accidentally leaking a bunch of financial secrets in court. Microsoft is claiming that Xbox doesn't want to have exclusives. They want to sell games on PlayStation 5. The government is claiming the Nintendo Switch is not a console. I mean, I want to talk about all of it. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, we're going to take a look at a lot of different, just bizarre quotes, completely outlandish statements, and I want to make it very clear, I'm not really for or against this deal. I'm kind of just curious to see what comes out of it, but more than anything else, I'm kind of just sitting back as a viewer and laughing at the chaos. I have an Xbox Series X, I've got a very powerful gaming PC, I've got a Nintendo Switch, I've got a PlayStation 5, so anywhere the games come, they're definitely going to come on me. Anyways, so check it out. First and foremost, let's talk about this quote from Microsoft's CEO, where he says that Xbox wants to end exclusives, but blames Sony. Oh, God. If it was up to me, I'd love to get rid of the entire exclusives on consoles, but that's not up for me to decide, not up for me to define, especially as low share player in the console market. The dominant player there, Sony, has defined market competition using exclusives, so that's the world we live in. I have no love for that world. This is a completely insane thing to say. The head of Microsoft, the dude above even the heads of Xbox, is saying, Xbox doesn't sell particularly well. We don't have a lot of Game Pass subscribers in the grand scheme of things. It feels like they're saying, well, Sony is releasing big AAA games like Spider-Man and God of War that sell tens of millions of copies very instantaneously. They're basically saying Xbox would love to just put games everywhere, but Sony has really set the boundaries that exclusives sell systems more than just good power and good controllers. This is a very strange statement. Let me actually look at the replies. A lot of these people, if there were no exclusives, why would you choose to buy one console over the other? As a gaming console, your primary selling point is the games it offers. Indeed, Microsoft would hate exclusives if they were in Sony's position. Very weird replies. Anyways, next up, FTC is still in a very strange position because the Federal Trade Commission they're currently fighting for the point that if this deal goes through, it's going to hurt the industry. For some reason, they're really dead set on blocking this deal because they think that somehow Call of Duty getting put into the Game Pass ecosystem, or even if they are legally required to release that on the PlayStation 5, they could choose to make the games worse. Even now, they're still saying that. FTC currently, right now, as I film this video, is pushing the Xbox will downgrade games narrative at the moment, asking about resolution and frame rate. Personally, I don't think they're going to do this. A lot of financial data has been coming out during the course of this, and it sounds like, honestly, there is tens of billions of dollars of just raw profit that is made by Call of Duty, even for console manufacturers. In fact, like Sony has said in a bunch of court rulings that a huge chunk of their total revenue, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people just play Call of Duty on PlayStation. So that's free money for them to even have a decent port of it. It's so bizarre. But going back to Tom Warren here, this is one of the quotes that people have been sharing around the most and kind of debating as to how wholesome or malicious it is. So, this is Matt Booty, the head of Xbox Game Studios, and he in 2019 was talking about trying to kill Sony by just spending more money than they do. We, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to outspend Sony. We can spin Sony out of business. Sony is really the only other player who can compete with Game Pass, and we have 2 years and 10 million subs lead. I mean, you can actually say whether or not that's authentic. I mean, this is a quote from 4 years ago. Things have definitely changed. He said this before the Xbox Series X even came out, but it is interesting that the actual Xbox game studio chief directly, the man himself, straight up just said, hey, if we want to crush Sony, we can just write checks until they die. I mean, they literally said that. Microsoft says this 2019 email from Xbox Game Studios chief about spinning Sony out of business refers to industry trends that we never pursued and is unrelated to the acquisition. Now, here's the thing. Both Sony and Microsoft are halfway lying during this case. I mean, obviously, they're very financially invested. Billions of dollars is on the line. A lot of high-paid lawyers, a lot of executives, a lot of people are very motivated to either get this deal through or completely block it. So, of course, Microsoft is going to pretend like this isn't a big deal statement, but I think we can all take that big pill and swallow it and realize, yes, if Microsoft could kill Sony, they'd do it. If Xbox could just grind Sony out and take all the profit, they would. I mean, in a heartbeat. And let's face it, Sony would do the same. If Sony actually was able to just destroy Microsoft and boost their profits by 19% or whatever, they'd probably do it, but they can't. The point is that competition makes better games. I don't think that Sony is really at risk of being outbought by Microsoft, but it's interesting that Microsoft even kicked the idea around. One of the most bizarre parts that keeps coming up in this case again and again and again is that the Nintendo Switch is or is not a competitor. There's been a bunch of discussion by lawyers, by executives, by high-up people in these companies where they straight up said Microsoft is saying that they don't really consider the Nintendo Switch a competitor, even though, I mean, obviously the Nintendo Switch outsells the hell out of Microsoft. I mean, games like Pokemon that sold 10 million units in 2 days, that's bigger than Halo has ever been. So it's always a weird thing of being like, do we really need to worry about the success of the Switch? Is the success of the Switch a side grade to other games? Like, my thing is that right now, the Nintendo Switch is just still so popular. The PlayStation 5 is so popular. The Xbox has such a diehard fan base. It's weird to completely discredit the value of the Switch just because it doesn't have Call of Duty, just because it doesn't have Diablo 4, but let me move on here. One of the weirder parts of this case that keeps coming up is that apparently Microsoft was actually in talks. We have leaked legal documents that were posted in court talking about the fact that Microsoft wanted to try and buy Square Enix. They tried to buy Bungie before Sony bought them to maybe have the creators of Halo come back and make Halo again. They were also in talks to purchase Sega, which would have been pretty bonkers. Honestly, I'll admit that it's very shocking to me to imagine how much of the gaming industry Microsoft was willing to buy up. Microsoft, they're making this $70 billion acquisition of Call of Duty, but if this doesn't go through, if the FTC does successfully block this, I think they're going on a buying spree. I think that they're going to buy Capcom and From Software and just every crazy random thing they possibly can. Because something we've definitely learned in the gaming industry is that even if something doesn't have a price tag, it can still be bought for enough billions. And at this point, the trillions in the bank that Microsoft has, they can afford to go liquid and buy stuff. But man, if they bought something like Square Enix and started making Final Fantasy an Xbox exclusive, that would be such a massive, massive win for them. I mean, you guys know this. I love Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is my favorite series of all time. Final Fantasy and Resident Evil are my bread and butter. If Final Fantasy becomes an Xbox exclusive, then I'm going more hardcore on Xbox. I mean, that's just the name of the game, baby. I know they try and act like exclusives aren't a big deal, but if Final Fantasy is an exclusive, I'm going to buy it. Now, a big part of the deposition that just happened yesterday that a lot of people were debating was a video played by Jim Ryan. It was like an hour-long testimony where he sort of explained why Sony is not a fan of this acquisition, where Sony and the PlayStation brand is seemingly afraid of the idea of this, of Call of Duty, of Diablo, of Activision Blizzard getting rolled into the larger Xbox ecosystem. Sony said that right now they're afraid to share PlayStation 6 info with Microsoft because, right now, obviously, Sony is working on the next system. Xbox is working on the next system. This typically happens. You're constantly tinkering with that next gen, and they're basically saying, okay, if you guys are making Call of Duty, and Call of Duty is something that makes us so freaking much money, we want that to run good, to look good, to play good on our console. So I understand that they're saying we want to give you PlayStation 6 dev kits, but we also don't because you're Xbox and we're PlayStation. We don't want to just give you all of our coolest secrets. Sony's alarm bells began ringing in August of 2022, essentially saying that they were actually kind of wary of this deal from pretty much the get-go. Sony is hedging against Xbox Game Pass. One of the more interesting parts of this is that Sony claims that nobody really likes Game Pass from a financial standpoint. People will take the paycheck. Obviously, it's free cash up front, especially if you think your game isn't going to sell well on Xbox. Getting a Microsoft payout is always worth it to you. But it's interesting that they go a step further and say that Sony is against Xbox Game Pass. They don't want to do their own subscription service to the day and date degree that Game Pass is doing. And it's very fascinating to me that Jim Ryan claims that publishers don't like Game Pass. Now, after this bombshell statement was released, a bunch of publishers actually came forward and said that they do enjoy it. Not all of them, none of the really major people, but a lot of like AA and indie studios came out and said, hey, Game Pass saved our game. Game Pass gave us that profit to finish our project. So how much you can actually believe Jim Ryan's statement, which obviously is incredibly biased, you got to take it all with a grain of salt. Okay, next up, obviously, here's just a short, funny quote. We got just 2 slides left here. This is the CEO of Activision. Almost everything he said was absolutely very stupid. Bobby Kotick is a smart guy. Obviously, he runs such a big, profitable company. But he said a lot of weird stuff, basically saying that, he doesn't consider cloud gaming really a problem, so he thinks that one of the major things, the FTC is really bringing up the fact that Xbox Game Pass Cloud is so much farther ahead than Sony's cloud-based technology. So if they put something like Modern Warfare 2 into the cloud, that would very much pitch the overall favorability of cloud gaming in favor of Microsoft. But Bobby Kotick essentially said, you know what? Nobody's going to do that. Playing Modern Warfare 2 on your phone would be like using a refrigerator as a safe. It's just such a weird way to phrase that. He's correct in that people would not want to play a first-person shooter on their phone with lag and latency, but what a weird thing, like using a refrigerator as a safe. Bobby Kotick's testimony was a couple days ago, and to be honest, it was so weird. He said a lot of things that I think purposely were really wishy-washy. A lot of half statements and things that probably are very hard to prove. Now, the final thing I wanted to show you is honestly just something that's so incredibly hysterical, which is just the fact that yesterday Sony posted this document. They released it in court and they posted it online to try and win a public favor. And it's talking about the cost of AAA games, but they didn't black out the stuff properly. Apparently, lawyers have a special way of blacking out documents, putting black bars, and it actually erases the metadata as well. It makes it where you can't just save the file and dig through what the text says. Somebody just blacked it out with a permanent marker. So we can see all this top secret stuff that says, hey, it cost $200 million to make Horizon Forbidden West. It had 300 full-time employees that made it. Development of The Last of Us Part 2 took, 90 months? Oh my God, what is that? God, 90 months starting back in 2014, ending in 2020. Development costs were around $220 million. This is just top secret stuff that really doesn't matter that much, but it's stuff that Sony wants to keep out. Like, their lawyers purposefully filed paperwork to keep this stuff hidden. This is stuff that they actually tried to hide. And then after getting that hidden info approved, they leaked it themselves anyways. This is such a goofy random L. This FTC case, just across the board, has been insane. I mean, let's face it, a lot of us are watching from the peanut gallery, eating the popcorn, because who really cares that much? If this deal gets approved, I fully believe that all these games are still coming to PlayStation. All these games are coming to Xbox. I mean, I don't think they're just going to instantly rip everything down. I believe that Xbox, even if I don't think a lot of their stuff is as good as I would like, I don't think that Xbox is lying in court. They are going to keep everything coming to PlayStation for the PS5, for the PS5 Pro, for the PlayStation 6. We're still going to see Activision Blizzard games everywhere for the time being. But what do you guys think about this? Tell me your thoughts on this completely bonkers, insane case that just seems to never end in the comments down below. And if you could, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Also, I just realized how goofy it is that I'm wearing a crappy muscle shirt while I'm talking about legal documents. Maybe I should have wore a suit. Oh well. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.